The following public affairs program is made possible through a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Hello, I'm John Bullington, and this is 930 Newsroom from Kennedy Space Center, Florida. This is our last program before Sunday's launch of Apollo 16. Regular editors Bruce Molnia and Tom Fowler are with me today. Linda King is on assignment. We'll begin tonight's show with a progress report on the Apollo 16 countdown, and for that, here is Tom Fowler.
Well, there are no significant problems in the Saturn V and spacecraft which might delay this Sunday's launch at 12:54 p.m. The astronauts now have no specific schedule until liftoff. They're setting their own schedule, working on simulations. Yesterday, the Apollo 16 prime crew of Young, Mattingly, and Charlie Duke practiced lunar orbit experiments in the command module simulator at the Flight Crew Training Building. Charlie Duke rehearsed in the lunar module simulator, and then in the afternoon, Duke and Commander John Young practiced deploying the lunar rover vehicle, and Mattingly had an afternoon science briefing on lunar geology. On the technical side, engineers prepare the spacecraft to load supercold liquid gases called cryogenics. Before that, they'll clear the pad of unnecessary personnel. At 10:30 tonight, the flight battery will be installed, and at 7 tomorrow morning, the launch crew will stow away all gear in the command module and prepare the giant structure beside the rocket, the mobile service structure, to move back tomorrow night. The crew is in good health, and the rocket has no major problem which might delay the launch. Some of the VIPs this Sunday include the Vice President, King Hussein of Jordan, and Julian David Eisenhower. The Highway Patrol expects over 1 million people this Sunday, and the weather calls for partly cloudy skies.
Thank you, Tom. You just stole my lead line. There will be, or people expect there to be, as many as 1 million people here to watch that launch. A large number of them will be from the Florida area, since this is the first weekend launch scheduled for midday. There's also a large contingent of South Carolinians coming to the area to watch as the rocket takes a former South Carolina resident on his way to the moon. We talked about that with the Chief of Public Affairs for Kennedy Space Center, Gordon Harris. Mr. Harris, I hear there is a large contingent of fans, relatives, and neighbors of Charlie Duke who are coming down for this launch. Can you tell us about that?
Indeed, there are. I understand that someone has dubbed them Duke's Raiders. At last count, I would guess there are at least 500 residents of South Carolina here in place waiting for the launch. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Duke, attended the church which I attended last Sunday. Mrs. Duke is here. She's not available to the press until after launch. Governor West is due to arrive Sunday with 2 busloads of people. They're flying into Orlando. So I think your state will be heavily represented in the crowd of some 30,000 people we expect to have on center for this event.
How does that overall figure for people to view this launch compare to previous launches in the Apollo program?
We'll have as many, if not more, people on center as guests of NASA for this event than any launch, including Apollo 11. The press attendance, the accreditation to date, is about 2,200, which compares favorably with the highest mark in Apollo, with one exception, and that was Apollo 11, when we got up to 3,400 press from 52 countries.
How do you handle the VIP situation? You have a lot of dignitaries coming in this time. Maybe you want to enumerate some of them that are coming in.
Yes, indeed we do. These are guests of the NASA Administrator, Dr. James Fletcher, or Vice President Spiro Agnew, who is coming down. The Vice President, by virtue of his office, is also Chairman of the National Space Council, a high-level body which advises President Nixon on matters pertaining to space. Mr. Agnew will come down with about 60 guests. We expect to have a total of about 6,000 distinguished guests, including several members of the President's cabinet, about 150 members of the Congress. Governor Reuben Askew of Florida will be here. David and Julie Eisenhower are coming, representing the President's family. There are many of the astronauts and the astronaut families who will be with us. Scientists, educators. We have 4 busloads, for example, of scientists from Great Britain here for the event. And we have 2 busloads from Germany. We cover a very broad span of all the various disciplines in the sciences, in engineering, in politics, other federal agencies. It will be quite a representative audience.
Missions to the moon are generally taken for granted by most Americans nowadays. There have been enough missions so far to almost satisfy the imaginations of people in this country. But occasionally, somebody turns up who doesn't believe that man has even gone to the moon. That was the case this week in Brazil. United Press International says the owner of a small Brazilian store has taken his 8-year-old son out of school because he is being taught that man has landed on the moon. Severino Salvino de Silva told newsmen they teach things that don't happen. He added that the space trip was an invention of newspapers and professors who do not believe in God. The space trip is not a myth to the 3 American astronauts who will fly to the moon aboard Apollo 16, and it is also a very real thing for their families. We talked about that with astronaut Charles Duke.
Is it really that glamorous? What part of it is glamour and what part of it is rough?
Well, most of mine has been sort of working hard. I guess after the flight, you get to meet some very important people and you get to represent the United States in various countries. This could be considered glamorous, but if you look at the schedule that those guys keep, even that's not glamorous because it's hard work. Our training, we put in about 80 hours a week in training. It's a back-breaking schedule, and it's physically and mentally. The physical part is the practice for the EVA exercises with the pressure suit and the backpack and the tools that we use. When we have, quote, a lightweight backpack that we use for earth training, 1G gravity, earth gravity training. And in my suit, in my pressure suit, in my backpack, I weigh out at 323 pounds, which is twice my normal weight in street clothes. We try to endure that for 4 or 5 hours twice a week on during our EVA training. So the schedule is really strenuous, and we have our physical training. We try to stay in shape, and you just don't go down to the rocket and say, hey man, here I am in my pressure suit, launch me to the moon. It's not that way at all. I've been working on this flight hard for 2 years now and have seen my family very little, just weekends primarily in the last 2 years. And it's been with just a few weeks out for vacations with them. It's been a hard schedule. Now, it doesn't say that we don't have a party or two or get to break in the schedule, but it really is time-consuming to learn the 17 million different little details that you're expected to know.
How does your family feel about your getting involved in this? You said you worked awfully hard for the past 2 years in preparation for this kind of thing.
Well, Dottie, my wife, is very excited about the flight. She was apprehensive 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we first knew that we were going to fly, but she's come around and seen how excited I am about the flight, and she's become equally as excited. The 2 boys we have, one is 6 now and one's 4, are typically, well, just daddy's going to the moon type thing, and what upsets them is I'm not in town enough to satisfy their desires for attention and all. But they are becoming excited about watching me run around on the moon. So that part of the flight is exciting to them.
That interview was filmed several weeks ago in Washington. Astronaut Charlie Duke is in isolation here at Kennedy Space Center. awaiting the launch of Apollo 16 on Sunday. We have a guest here today who can tell us about the area around Kennedy Space Center, how the towns nearby have prospered due to the space boom. We'll get to him in just a moment, but first Tom Fowler will give us a quick look at tourism and the growth of the towns near and around the Space Center.
Thousands of people visit the Kennedy Space Center every year, and most people go to the Visitor Information Center on the main causeway leading to the NASA complex, which is run by TWA, not NASA. Actual spacecraft from Apollo 4, Gemini 9, and Mercury 1 are on display outside the building. Inside, they're models of unmanned spacecraft, Surveyor 1, the Lunar Orbiter, Ranger, and Mariner. Small displays feature models of Skylab and the Space Shuttle. Anywhere people go in vacations these days, they're going to find gift shops. And if you sightsee, you're going to find gift shops. And here at Kennedy Space Center, there's a gift shop. Space visitors can buy inflatable astronauts or Apollo pennants. They can get NASA flags, NASA bumper stickers, Apollo slides, movie film, or any badge from a couple of dozen manned space flights long since splashed down the Pacific. Badges from Gemini 9, Mercury 7, and Apollo 8. Any of those series. Since NASA's security gates are open to the public only on Sundays, visitors usually take the tour bus. In the last 6 years, almost 5 million people rode tours through the Kennedy Space Center. Adult tickets cost $2.50, children are 50 cents, and students are $1.50. So if you want to see Cape Kennedy, most of the time you have to take a bus and wait. Workers at the Visitor Center said during the week before Easter, over 12,000 people rode the tour each day. First stop on the tour is the Air Force Space Museum, built next to the first pad on Old Cape Canaveral, behind a row of sand dunes where America's first satellite, Explorer 1, was lifted into orbit on a Jupiter C rocket. The old Mercury pad seemed a lot larger 11 years ago, with crews milling around servicing the bird and newsmen talking about the first manned spaceflight. Alan Shepard rode Freedom 7 into space from this pad on May 5, 1961. His Mercury spacecraft weighed only 4,000 pounds and was in space 15 minutes, boosted by an Army Redstone rocket. This particular mock-up here is a boilerplate mock-up used before Shepard's flight to test the capsule's buoyancy in open water. They tested it right off this beach, about 200 yards out. Near the first concrete blockhouse, there is a real Atlas rocket, the workhorse of America's unmanned space program and booster for the last few Mercury flights. The Atlas is now coupled with a Centaur second stage for more power. And there's Delta, the rocket used to lift communication satellites into synchronous Earth orbit. Both Atlas and Delta are standard equipment for launching any satellite into Earth orbit. About 5,000 workers do maintenance on these two pads to prepare Atlas and Delta satellites for orbit. Since this is the Air Force Space Museum, there are over a dozen rockets and missiles which were not used for space, but for national defense. Some of these are anti-aircraft missiles, tactical missiles which could carry small nuclear warheads, and some of the early rockets of the 50s, which used ramjet engines and were really just unmanned jets. Most of these are obsolete now, replaced by more sophisticated and more costly hardware. There's also an odd-looking rocket that never went into production. It looks a lot like models of the Space Shuttle. This strange machine was developed in the mid-50s as an ICBM, but was scrapped. Its first stage was a rocket, and the second used a ramjet engine. This was called a piggyback configuration. In the 50s, this looked like science fiction, but in the 70s, it looks a lot like the Space Shuttle. There's also a mock-up of NASA's experimental lifting body, an aircraft with no wings, which stays aloft by the shape of its fuselage. Someday, the Space Shuttle will be able to land like an airplane thanks to NASA's research on this craft. At the end of the tour, the buses stop about a half mile from Launch Complex 39. Visitors get out of the buses and take a look at the bird, Apollo 16. The tour is in about 2 hours before sunset. At night, tourists go to what's called the Strip for entertainment. When the boom hit in the early 60s, strip cities grew up around Cape Kennedy and the Kennedy Space Center. Cocoa Beach, south of the space complex, is about 6 miles of motels, restaurants, shopping centers, and service stations. It looks a lot like Ocean Drive Beach, but it's not quite as large as Myrtle Beach. There are other commercial strips along causeways leading from Cocoa to Cocoa Beach and along 13 miles of US 1 between Cocoa and Titusville. Cocoa is the largest town near the Kennedy Space Center with about 12,000 people. And Cocoa was a good-sized small town before NASA, Apollo, and the Kennedy Space Center moved in 10 years ago. There's the old downtown, with buildings from the 20s and 30s in Spanish stucco. But the old section almost decayed in the late 50s and early 60s until concerned business leaders got together to renovate it. With plaster and new paint, the old buildings are attracting specialty shops, boutiques, and banks. And there still are old homes, too, on quiet streets, away from the rush of four-lane highways in the Strip, on streets like Valencia, which run alongside the bank of the Indian River. The houses are kept up and the lawns are thick with green plants and shrubs. This is the upper-class neighborhood. Blacks and poor whites live 2 blocks away in houses from the 50s, cinder block homes common throughout Florida. Cocoa and Brevard County were hit hard by cutbacks in NASA's budget 2 years ago, but now people in Cocoa say it's booming again. And our guest today is Mr. Hubert Griggs. Cocoa and Cocoa Beach and Cape Kennedy are in Brevard County. Mr. Griggs is Brevard County Bureau Chief of the Orlando Sentinel. He's a native of Brevard County and is married to a Hartsville, South Carolina native. He's done newspaper work in Brevard County since 1960 and been with the Sentinel for the last 2 years. So Mr. Griggs has seen the impact Kennedy Space Center has had on Cocoa and Brevard County. Mr. Griggs, what was it like to live in Brevard County before Kennedy Space Center?
It was a very pleasant place to live. The pace was much slower, of course. The cultural life was not quite so varied. We had 2 bars that passed for nightclubs. But while the entertainment wasn't as garish, the living was nicer in many ways. The crime rate, of course, wasn't nearly so high because with progress you inevitably pay certain prices. With growth, with economic prosperity, with a substitution of the space program for what used to be primarily a citrus-based economy, has come an increasing crime rate, all kinds of urban sprawl problems, zoning problems that you wouldn't believe, old sections of the city getting left behind and being a problem as to exactly what to do with them. All in all, the average everyday life has not changed except that everything has gotten bigger.
Mr. Griggs, in the last 2.5 or 3 years, the Kennedy Space Center has lost about 50% of its employees. How has this affected the local economy?
It had quite a strong effect in the beginning, of course. It vacated an enormous amount of housing. Back when the Space Center, when Cape Kennedy first began to build, the first great influx of population was centered around construction people. They were long construction jobs, so they were, I guess you'd say, semi-permanent residents. Many of them were here for quite a few years. They, for the most part, bought homes. Those few rentals that were available in the area were taken up very quickly. So a great deal of home construction sprang into existence. The first great flood of it being in the south end of the county, gradually spreading into the central area. After that, then, of course, came the people who moved in to man the programs, the various research programs for the Air Force missiles, and then ultimately into the space program.
What kind of an effect has this large influx of highly trained, highly educated people had on the educational system in this county?
Well, that caused problems. I think we felt very much in Brevard County like Alice through the looking glass. We felt that we were running at top speed to keep from losing ground because naturally the educational system, along with the roads and nearly everything else in the county, simply were not prepared to take on that kind of a sudden mushrooming population. We embarked on a rather fantastic school building program. The school I went to had been the school my father had gone to and was still adequate when I graduated from high school there, with very little enlargement. But just a few years later, we had new schools in every direction. areas that had not had enough population to have their own school, from as far as 10 or 15 miles away from the school, suddenly acquired their own schools because the people had moved into those areas. It caused an enormous problem, of course, in teacher recruitment. We probably stole teachers from South Carolina along with every other state we could pirate people from, because we had to have somebody in those classrooms. As a matter of fact, I met my wife when she came down from Hartsville to teach at a school here on Merritt Island.
What's the average teacher's salary here? I was just wondering.
Well, beginning teachers start at slightly less than $7,000. It goes up through years, increments, experience, returning to the county, continuing contract classifications, to I think around 12,000, going into somewhat higher brackets, of course, as you move up through the master's degrees and doctorate degrees, and of course the administrative salaries being on top.
About the educational level of the children themselves at this point, are you having a large output of people going to big universities and colleges?
Well, very much so. I haven't checked in the last several months, really, to see what the status of it was, but our percentage of high school graduates going on to college in recent years has been really fantastic. It's been almost unbelievable. It's understandable. Brevard Countyans always, at least so long as I've been around, have been very concerned about higher education. I think quite a healthy percentage of my graduating class went to college. But we had at that time, of course, a much smaller percentage of people parents who had graduated from college. Now, the percentage of parents who have graduated from college is enormous because of all the highly qualified, highly educated people who have come in because of the space program and the satellite economic development that has occurred. The various contractors, financial institutions, the educational level in Brevard County is really almost unbelievable. An example might be that we captured something like 80% of the recent state-level science fair winners. Brevard County schools got about 80% of those winners in the entire state.
I'd like to get into two other aspects of the economy. One, Disney World, and the second, the retirement population. I've been told that in the last 3 or 4 years, most of the homes that were vacated by space workers were bought up by retirees. Could you comment on this?
I think this would be true. The majority of them, I think, have been. It's a relatively new thing to Brevard County. We've always had some retirees. I suppose every Florida community has some. But in the numbers that we now have them is a new phenomenon in Brevard. It was because of the opportunity, the large number of vacant homes, the reasonable prices at which they were available. There were so many VA and FHA homes. The down payments were relatively reasonable. While we think that property values in Brevard County have escalated like one of the rockets they fire here from the KSC, they have been worse in other areas. In Fort Lauderdale, for instance, which has been for many years one of the meccas for retired people, property values have gotten so out of sight that we have had, actually, some people come sell their homes in Fort Lauderdale at a profit, at a substantial profit usually, and move up here because the home prices were so much cheaper.
We've learned today that Kennedy Space Center will be one of the locations from which the space shuttle will be launched. Some projections from you on what that might do to this area then?
Well, needless to say, it is beautiful news. There are, as I said, always some unpleasant things that come along with growth and progress and being busy. But I think most of us Brevard Countyans are not eager to see this exciting thing out here slow down any more than necessary. We are very happy about it. I don't expect ever to see at least not prompted by the space program, the kind of boom that we had a few years back. That was an explosion, literally population growth, economic explosion that probably, well, almost certainly will not occur again. The shuttle will be good for the area. It will help with the economy. It will keep under the economy some footings that we were beginning to wonder if we would lose altogether. But it will be a much more conservative thing, a thing that, frankly, I imagine the leaders, the governmental leaders, with their problems of zoning and trying to get roads built and various facilities that the public needs, will find much easier to keep up with.
Mr. Griggs, what would happen if the Kennedy Space Center was ever shut down completely? What would happen to Brevard County?
Well, Brevard County would partially revert to very much what it was before, I think. There are efforts being made to build tourism here. And I think some of those efforts will bear fruit, so I don't think Brevard County will dry up and blow off the map. It will remain. Perhaps if the Space Center closed, Citrus would again assume a little more importance, having been pushed to the background in recent years, and tourism would become a much more important factor. And certainly if any area of Florida ever was blessed with the natural facilities for tourism, it is Brevard County, with the enormous amount of water we have, the lagoons, the ocean, the fresh water, the swimming, the fishing, the boating, the surfing, and the sailing. It would be hard to find any place that is better equipped to give tourists what they expect to find when they come to Florida.
And the position of Disneyland, less than 50 miles away, also
well, that
is
certainly
a
won't
tremendous
hurt
benefit.
Brevard County's economy. The exact effect of it is uncertain at this point. It is, of course, having an enormous effect over in Osceola County and Orange County, where it is located. At this point, the prime effect, I suppose, of Disney has been Disney Corporation's purchase of some land in the South Brevard Beaches area, which has, of course, driven land prices out of sight and enormously stimulated land buying and speculation and investment in land in that area. Tourism has been a relatively minor effect up to this stage. I think it will increase.
We're almost out of time, but I've got one quick question for you on another topic. Do you people here ever get excited over a regular Apollo space shot?
Yes, we do. I may not sound like it. I guess I'm a little tired at this point. Along with you, I suspect. It has been a long, hard week. But yes, we get excited. You never lose all the thrill of seeing that big rocket and that trip with the men aboard.
Mr. Griggs,
that drama never gets lost.
thank you very much for coming on. We're out of time. That is today's program. This is our last show before the launch of Apollo 16 this Sunday at 12:54 p.m. We'll be back in our ETV studios on Monday night with a wrap-up of our coverage here at the Kennedy Space Center. And until then, this is John Bullington. Good night.